After discovering his former housekeeper was living on the streets of Los Angeles with her twin daughters, a reclusive billionaire left them a small house in a secluded canyon. But when they unlocked the door, the sight that greeted them was beyond anything they could have imagined. The sky was still a deep, inky black over Beverly Hills when David Sterling, at 60, stepped out of his penthouse. The California pre-dawn carried a damp chill that seeped into the bones, a stark contrast to the daytime heat, prompting even the wealthiest residents to pull their designer jackets tighter as they rushed along the shadowy streets. David, however, had been following the same somber ritual for weeks. Wake before sunrise, don one of his perfectly tailored suits, and have Walter, his driver of 2 decades, navigate the familiar route. The armored sedan moved like a phantom through the sleeping city, its tinted windows concealing the passenger whose 62 years were etched onto a face heavy with a guilt that time refused to erode. His reflection in the glass was a ghostly overlay on the awakening city lights. "Same position as yesterday," David murmured, his voice barely a whisper. His gaze was locked on a familiar spot in Griffith Park. Walter, long accustomed to his employer's recent melancholic routines, simply nodded, parking the car discreetly under the sprawling branches of an ancient sycamore. There she was, on the same worn bench she occupied every dawn. Ashley Miller, whose slender frame was a fragile shield against the world for her 4-year-old twins, Olivia and Emma. The threadbare blanket draped over them was a pitiful defense against the encroaching morning cold. David watched how Ashley, even in sleep, kept her arms wrapped tightly around the girls, a primal fear of them being torn away from her etched into her posture. The memories flooded back with a sharp, unwelcome clarity. Ashley at 25, a new hire in his corporate cleaning crew, always with a shy but resilient smile. The twins as infants, their occasional visits to their mother's workplace filling the sterile hallways with peals of innocent laughter. Then the trouble started, the frequent tardiness, the unexplained absences, the mumbled excuses about childhood emergencies. "Sir," Walter's voice cut through his reverie, "I found the information you requested regarding the property on Willow Creek Road." David accepted the offered file, his fingers grazing over the meticulously organized documents. Blueprints, evaluations, property records. It all confirmed the abandoned plot could be secured swiftly for the right price. "Call my legal team," he instructed, his eyes never leaving the bench where Ashley was beginning to stir. "I want the papers ready by the end of the day." The weeks that followed were a blur of silent, calculated action. David spent his mornings in observation, his afternoons in planning, and his nights wrestling with old conversations he'd had with Elizabeth, his late wife. "Everyone deserves a second chance, David," she used to say, her blue eyes filled with a compassion he was only now starting to comprehend. Elizabeth had always championed an assistance fund for employees facing hardship, an initiative he had permitted more to appease her than out of any genuine belief. After she passed away 5 years ago, the fund was quietly dismantled, along with several other employee-centric policies. Construction of the small house began on a hazy October morning. David personally oversaw every detail. High-quality timber for the frame, top-of-the-line thermal insulation, windows designed to seal in warmth during winter and repel the summer heat. The design was modest but deeply functional. 2 cozy bedrooms, a living area that flowed into a compact kitchen, a bathroom with a reliable water heater, and a reinforced basement that could double as a shelter. Each morning before heading to his high-rise office, he would supervise the progress. The construction crew, paid generously for their silence, asked no questions about the billionaire who insisted on personally inspecting every nail and joint of the small structure. "The outlets need to be higher," he instructed one day, his mind on the curious hands of the twins. "And I want protective bars on all the windows on the second floor." As the house took shape, David found himself lost in fantasies of a life he'd never witnessed. Ashley cooking breakfast in a safe, warm kitchen, the twins spreading their homework across the dining table, their laughter echoing through the heated rooms. It was a dangerous daydream, he knew, There was no guarantee they would even find the house, let alone choose to stay. One afternoon, while overseeing the furniture installation, all of it carefully selected to be sturdy and comfortable without appearing ostentatiously new, David pulled a worn photograph from his wallet. It was from a company holiday party from years ago. Ashley was there, younger and full of life, with the newborn twins in her arms. Elizabeth stood beside her, radiating that smile that could illuminate a room. "You were right, my love," he murmured to the photo, "as always." The furnishing was completed with the same obsessive attention to detail. Beds with firm but welcoming mattresses, solid dressers for their clothes, a small bookshelf ready to be filled with children's stories. In the kitchen, David insisted the pantry be stocked with non-perishable foods, cleaning supplies, and even basic school materials for the girls. Nothing too new, he told the decorating team. It should look used, but well cared for, as if it's been waiting for them. The final touch was a small garden plot in the backyard. David recalled Ashley once mentioning a distant dream of growing her own vegetables. Now, raised beds awaited seeds, and a small collection of gardening tools rested in a protected shed. On the last night before the project was finished, David lingered alone in the house. The dusk light filtered through the new windows, casting dancing shadows on the freshly painted walls. His expensive shoes made soft echoes on the wooden floor as he conducted one final inspection. In the larger bedroom, a queen-sized bed waited for Ashley, made with clean sheets and a thick quilt for the cooler nights. In the adjacent room, two identical twin beds were positioned under the window, each with its own reading lamp. David could almost hear Olivia and Emma arguing playfully over which side was theirs, a simple childhood joy they had been denied. In the kitchen, his fingers traced the smooth surface of the dining table. 4 chairs surrounded it, 3 for the family and 1 extra. For a visitor, he told himself, ignoring the familiar tightness in his chest as he imagined himself sitting there, sharing a meal with them. The envelope tucked into his inner pocket felt like a block of lead. Inside, a meticulously worded letter was addressed to the proprietor of a small neighborhood market just off Willow Creek Road. Its instructions were unambiguous. A job, complete with flexible hours to accommodate a single mother's responsibilities, was to be offered to one Ashley Miller. The salary, of course, would be discreetly subsidized to ensure it was a living wage. It was manipulation, he acknowledged, another calculated move to control the board, to shape a destiny that wasn't his. But this time, he reasoned, it was for a righteous cause. In the trunk of his sedan, a final surprise awaited. 3 new winter coats, carefully chosen to appear second-hand, but in excellent condition. At some point in the coming weeks, as the nights grew colder, they would be found along the path Ashley and the girls usually took. Before locking the front door for the last time, David spent a few moments in the small basement. The reinforced walls and independent heating system would offer protection in even the worst of storms. In a corner, a discreetly placed box held emergency supplies: flashlights, batteries, extra blankets, a small hand-crank radio. It was excessive, perhaps, but years in the cutthroat world of business had taught him to always be prepared for the worst. Back in the car, David found Walter waiting patiently, as always. The sky had deepened to a bruised purple, and the first stars began to prick the darkness over Los Angeles. "Home, Walter," he instructed, allowing himself one last glance at the house. In the twilight, it looked smaller, more vulnerable, yet somehow more real, more alive, a promise waiting to be kept. In his Italian leather briefcase, nestled between billion-dollar contracts and quarterly reports, rested one final document: the deed to the land, ready for transfer when the time was right. It was his last act of control, he thought wryly. After this, everything would depend on fate, and on Ashley. As the sedan glided silently through the LA night, David allowed himself a moment of reflection. Tomorrow, he would return to his world of corporate mergers and decisions that impacted thousands. He would remain the private, enigmatic billionaire who had built an empire through shrewd, sometimes ruthless, determination. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in a long, long while, he felt he was doing something Elizabeth would have celebrated, something that might just begin to balance the scales of his past. Somewhere in the sprawling city, 3 hearts beat in unison on a park bench, oblivious to the change that lay in wait. And on a quiet road, a small house stood patiently, ready to be transformed from a structure into a home, from a project into redemption. David closed his eyes, letting the smooth motion of the car soothe him. Tomorrow was another day. Tomorrow, perhaps, 3 lives would start to change, and with them, silently, his own. Night fell over Los Angeles, draping the city in its starry cloak. Somewhere between the glittering skyscrapers and the forgotten shadows, between immense power and grinding poverty, between the past and the future, a small miracle was about to unfold. And it all began with a glance, a memory, and the long-overdue courage to do the right thing. Night fell over Los Angeles like an icy blanket. Ashley Miller clutched Emma to her chest, feeling the heat of her fever radiate through the thin jacket. The 4-year-old trembled in her arms, her flushed face pressed against her mother's neck, while Olivia walked beside them, her small hand gripping the hem of Ashley's coat. "Mommy," Emma whispered, her voice a weak, raspy thread. "I'm cold." Ashley bit her lip, fighting back the tears that stung her eyes. The shelters were full again tonight, as they always were, and the thought of bringing a feverish Emma into that crowded, unsanitary environment made her heart seize. Olivia, ever the sturdier twin, looked at her sister with wide, worried eyes. "It'll be all right, my love," Ashley murmured, the words more a prayer for herself than a promise to her children. "We'll find some place to rest." They were walking down Willow Creek Road, a quiet stretch they sometimes used as a shortcut, when Ashley noticed something different. A soft light glowed from a small house she couldn't recall ever seeing before. Or perhaps she just never had a reason to look. It was a modest but well-built home, with a welcoming porch and windows that shone like beacons in the surrounding darkness. Olivia was the first to point. "Mommy, look, there's a light." Ashley hesitated. Years on the streets had taught her to be wary of anything that seemed too good to be true. But Emma was burning up, and the biting November wind showed no signs of mercy. With cautious steps, she approached the house. The light came from a single fixture on the porch, almost as if it were expecting visitors. The small garden, though dormant for the winter, had an inviting feel. Ashley climbed the porch steps, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. To her utter astonishment, it turned. It was unlocked. She pushed the door open gently, bracing herself for signs of squatters or danger. But what she saw made her gasp. The interior of the house was immaculate. A modest yet cozy living room unfolded before them, with a sofa that looked more comfortable than any bed she'd slept in for years. A small fireplace stood ready, a neat stack of firewood beside it. "Is anyone home?" Ashley called out, her voice shaky in the quiet space. There was no answer. Olivia, always the more adventurous of the two, had already let go of her mother's coat, exploring the small space with wide-eyed wonder. "Mommy, there's a kitchen. And look, there's food." Ashley followed her daughter into the compact but perfectly equipped kitchen. The cabinets, when opened, revealed cans of soup, boxes of pasta, and cereal, all arranged as if waiting for them. A small refrigerator hummed quietly in the corner. Opening it, Ashley found milk, eggs, and other fresh essentials. Emma's cough brought her back to the urgent reality. Making a split-second decision, Ashley shut the front door and slid the bolt lock into place. Whether this was a dream or a trap, she would face the consequences later. Right now, her daughter needed warmth and care. The bathroom was another shock. Clean, functional, with a stream of hot water flowing from the faucet. Ashley nearly wept with relief as she bathed Emma, dressing her in clean clothes she found in one of the dressers. Meanwhile, Olivia had discovered the children's bedroom with its 2 identical twin beds, each with its own colorful bedside lamp. "Can I lie down here, Mommy?" "Please," Olivia begged, already clambering onto one of the beds. Ashley hesitated for only a second before nodding. Emma was already half asleep in her arms, the fever finally beginning to recede thanks to the warm bath and the children's medicine Ashley had discovered in the bathroom cabinet. She gently laid the little one in the other bed, pulling a soft, lavender-scented blanket over her. While her girls slept, Ashley explored the rest of the house. Each discovery left her more bewildered. A well-organized basement filled with emergency supplies, a small study nook stocked with school materials, even a backyard that looked prepped for a garden. Sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of hot tea clutched in her hands, the first in so long she could hardly remember, Ashley tried to make sense of it all. Her rational mind screamed that it was dangerous, that nothing this good ever came without a price. But there was something else, a profound sense of peace she couldn't explain. The early morning hours passed slowly. Ashley checked on Emma repeatedly, relieved to find her fever dropping and her breathing easing. Olivia slept soundly, a small smile playing on her lips, as if she were having the best dream of her life. When the sun finally began to cast its first rays through the windows, Ashley realized she had made a decision. She didn't know who had prepared this place or why. She didn't know how long they could stay or what price they might eventually have to pay. But looking at her daughters, sleeping peacefully and safely for the first time in 2 years, she felt something she had long forgotten: hope. Emma woke first, her sleepy eyes blinking open to a new day. The fever was gone, leaving only a faint flush on her cheeks. "Mommy," she called, her voice already stronger. "Where are we?" Ashley sat on the edge of the bed, gently stroking her daughter's dark hair. "In a safe place, my love?" "Home." Olivia, awakened by the voices, bounded out of her bed and ran to hug her sister. "Emily, you won't believe it. We have our own room, and there are toys, and Mommy made hot chocolate." The girls giggled together, a sound so precious and rare that it made Ashley's heart ache. Emma, now feeling stronger, sat up and asked to explore the house with her sister. Olivia, taking on the role of tour guide, began showing her all the wonders she had discovered the night before. Ashley watched her daughters run through the house, their laughter echoing off the walls like music. The morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating every corner of what, inexplicably, was already beginning to feel like home. In the kitchen, she prepared a simple breakfast of eggs, toast, and warm milk. The girls sat at the table, their legs swinging from their chairs, chattering excitedly about all the things they wanted to do in their new house. Olivia was already making plans to decorate her side of the room, while Emma dreamed of all the books they could read together on the sofa. Ashley let herself sink into the normality of the moment, the clink of silverware, the smell of coffee, the warmth of the sun on her face. It was as if a crushing weight had been lifted from her shoulders, allowing her to take a full, deep breath for the first time in years. But the questions still lingered in the back of her mind. Who had done this? Why? And most importantly, how long could it last? The thought of being forced back onto the streets, of seeing the light in her daughter's eyes extinguished, was almost unbearable. While washing the breakfast dishes, Ashley noticed a white envelope on the kitchen counter, something she hadn't seen in her exhaustion the night before. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, she found a key and a simple, typewritten note. For anyone in need of a fresh start, stay as long as necessary. The tears she had held back for so long finally fell, silent and steady. Olivia and Emma, seeing their mother's quiet sobs, ran to hug her. "Why are you crying, Mommy?" Olivia asked, her big eyes full of concern. Ashley held her daughters tight, feeling their small hearts beating against hers. "Because sometimes," she answered softly, "miracles happen when we need them most." That morning, as the sun rose over Los Angeles, 3 hearts began to heal. Emma, fully recovered from her fever, played with her sister on the living room rug. Olivia organized the few belongings they owned, making grand plans for their new room. And Ashley, sitting on the porch with another cup of tea, gazed at the small garden plot and allowed herself, for the first time in a very long time, to dream of the future. The house, which had appeared like a beacon in their darkest night, was beginning to fulfill its purpose. It was not just a shelter from the cold or a roof over their heads. It was a second chance, a new beginning, a small miracle hidden away on Willow Creek Road. And though Ashley didn't know it, somewhere across the city, a man watched discreetly from the window of his sedan, a faint smile on his lips as he thought of his late wife and how much she would have approved of this small act of redemption. The day unfolded in a series of small, wondrous discoveries. Emma found a collection of children's books on a low shelf, her eyes shining as she recognized stories her preschool teacher used to read. Olivia unearthed a chest filled with art supplies, colored pencils, paper, crayons, and immediately set to work drawing their new home. Ashley spent the afternoon organizing and cleaning. Though the house was already spotless, the simple act of homemaking was a way to keep her hands busy while her mind grappled with the enormity of what was happening. Every drawer she opened, every cabinet she explored, revealed more evidence of someone's careful planning. In the basement, alongside the emergency supplies, she found boxes of winter clothing, warm coats, boots, and gloves, all in sizes that fit the 3 of them perfectly. In a small laundry area, a washer and dryer stood ready for use, complete with detergent and fabric softener. It was as if every basic need they had been forced to neglect for 2 years was being met at once. As the day wore on, Ashley felt her initial suspicions slowly being replaced by a different emotion. It wasn't just gratitude, though that was certainly there in abundance. It was something deeper, more foundational, a renewed sense of self-worth. Watching her daughters play in the living room, Ashley allowed herself to revisit the past 2 years. The nights in shelters, the days spent wandering the city looking for work, the meals she'd skipped so her daughters could eat, the shame of losing her job, the humiliation of failing to provide, the constant gnawing fear that something worse was always just around the corner. But now, sitting in this warm kitchen with the smell of homemade soup, the first she'd cooked in so long, filling the air, Ashley felt a shift within her. It was as if the universe was telling her that she deserved this second chance, that her desperate efforts to keep her daughters safe and loved, even in the most dire of circumstances, had not been in vain. Emma, her fever a distant memory, helped set the table for dinner, her small hands carefully placing the utensils just as Ashley had taught her long ago. Olivia had decorated the refrigerator with her colorful drawings, a yellow house under a smiling sun, 3 stick figures holding hands in the garden, and flowers in every color imaginable. "Mommy," Olivia called as she taped another masterpiece to the fridge door, "can we plant real flowers in the garden, like the ones in my picture?" Ashley looked out the kitchen window at the small plot of land that seemed to be waiting. "When spring comes, my love, we'll plant all the flowers you want." It was a dangerous promise, she knew. There was no guarantee they would still be here by spring. But something in her heart told her that this time was different, that this house that had appeared like a miracle was not just a fleeting dream. After dinner, while the girls took a bath, a luxury that still sent them into fits of joyful splashing, Ashley found a blank notebook in a living room drawer. She sat at the kitchen table and began to write, documenting every detail of this unbelievable day. Maybe one day she could show these pages to her daughters so they would understand how their lives had changed in a single winter night. The hours passed peacefully. Olivia and Emma, clean and warm, asked to sleep together in one bed, still not quite trusting this new reality. Ashley read to them until they fell asleep, their soft, even breaths sinking into a peaceful rhythm. Later, alone in the living room, Ashley allowed herself to cry again. These were not the tears of despair or fear that had been her constant companions for 2 years. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, and of rekindled hope. The night was clear, and through the living room window she could see the stars glittering over Los Angeles. Somewhere out there was a person who had cared enough to create this refuge, to give her and her daughters a chance to start over. "Thank you," she whispered into the quiet of the night, her words carrying the weight of 2 years of hardship. The small convenience store on the corner, Peterson's Market, looked unremarkable at first glance. Its modest window displays showed everyday items, and a faded sign bore the store's name in letters that had seen better days. Yet for Ashley Miller, standing at the door on that cold winter morning, the establishment represented far more than just a neighborhood shop. It held the possibility of a new life. Frank Peterson, the owner for 3 decades, was arranging canned goods on a shelf when the bell over the door chimed softly. He turned to see a young woman, likely in her early 30s, holding a resume in visibly trembling hands. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson," Ashley greeted, her voice low but determined. "I'm here about the attendant position." Frank adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, studying the woman before him. A few days earlier, he had received a mysterious letter, specifically addressed to him, recommending one Ashley Miller for the job. The letter came with a substantial financial guarantee, an offer to subsidize her wages and benefits as long as he provided her with flexible hours. "Of course, Ms. Miller. Please come to my office." What Frank called an office was a tiny, cramped cubicle in the back of the store, more storage closet than administrative space. Stacks of invoices and old records occupied every available surface, leaving only a narrow path to the well-worn desk. "I have 2 small daughters," Ashley began before Frank could even ask, her hands gripping the resume tighter. "Twins, 4 years old. I know that might be a problem with scheduling, but I promise I'm dedicated and a fast learner. I can adapt to any shift as long as—" "Actually," Frank interrupted gently, a kind smile softening his features, "we're specifically looking for someone who can work flexible hours. We have customers at all different times, so having someone who can cover various shifts would be a huge help." Ashley blinked, momentarily thrown by his response. It was the first time in countless interviews that her status as a single mother hadn't been an immediate disqualifier. I can adapt to any schedule," she repeated, this time with more confidence, "as long as I can drop off and pick up my girls from school. They're starting at a preschool nearby." Frank smiled more broadly, remembering his own days of raising young children. His wife, who had passed away 5 years ago, always said that raising a family was the most important job in the world. "That preschool is just 2 blocks away, right? I'm sure we can work out something that fits for everyone. Now, tell me a bit about your past work experience." The interview flowed easily after that. Ashley spoke of her years as a housekeeper in a large company, of her attention to detail and her work ethic. She didn't mention the firing or the 2 years on the streets. Some stories were too heavy for a first meeting. Frank, in turn, explained the duties: customer service, stocking shelves, basic store maintenance. The pay wasn't extraordinary, but it came with basic benefits and, most importantly, the promise of understanding regarding her family responsibilities. "When can you start?" he finally asked after nearly an hour. Ashley felt tears welling at the corners of her eyes, but blinked them back. Immediately. The next morning, Ashley walked Olivia and Emma to the local preschool for the first time. The colorful building, with children's drawings taped to the windows and a small playground out front, looked inviting. Even so, the girls clung to her legs, their anxiety plain to see. "It'll be all right," Ashley whispered, kneeling to hug them. Her new work uniform, a green T-shirt with the Market's logo, still smelled new against her skin. "I'll be working right nearby, and you'll make so many new friends here." Their teacher, Ms. Peterson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, approached the trio. "Hello, girls. How about you come see our classroom? We have a very special reading corner with comfy cushions and wonderful books. Emma, always the more timid of the two, hid further behind her sister. Olivia, however, her dark eyes shining with a mix of fear and curiosity, took a small step forward. "Do you have adventure books?" she asked in a low but clear voice. "Oh, plenty," Ms. Peterson replied brightly, extending a hand to the little girl. "We have stories about pirates, warrior princesses, and space explorers. Want to see?" Olivia glanced at her mother for approval, and after receiving an encouraging smile, took the teacher's hand. Emma, after a moment of hesitation that felt like an eternity, followed her sister's lead. Ashley watched her daughters enter the classroom, their small bodies still tense, but already showing the extraordinary resilience of children. Silent tears streamed down her face as they disappeared through the brightly decorated door. Tears of fear, hope, and gratitude for this new beginning. Her first day at the market was a whirlwind of nerves and determination. Frank proved to be a patient teacher, calmly explaining the workings of the old cash register, the system for organizing stock, and the opening and closing procedures. "Don't worry about getting it all today," he said, noticing her intense concentration. "You'll get the hang of it. The most important thing is how you treat the customers, and I can already see you've got a knack for that." He was right. In the days that followed, Ashley not only mastered the technical aspects of the job, but also began to build relationships with the regular customers. Her punctuality was flawless, her dedication unwavering, and her gentle smile quickly became a welcome part of the store's atmosphere. The weeks turned into a month, then two. Olivia and Emma blossomed in preschool, making friends and impressing their teachers with their insatiable curiosity. Ms. Peterson often remarked how, despite being identical, the twins had distinctly complementary personalities. Olivia, the adventurer, always eager for new experiences. Emma, the observer, quietly taking in every detail of the world around her. Ashley settled into her new routine with meticulous precision. Up at 6, a nutritious breakfast, get the girls ready for school, work her shift at the market, pick up the girls, help with homework, prepare dinner. Every minute was accounted for, every moment a brick in the new life she was building for her daughters. Frank watched his new employee with growing admiration. Ashley never complained about her shifts, never hesitated to work extra when needed, and always found small ways to improve the store's efficiency. Her presence brought a new vitality to the old market. "You know," he commented one afternoon as they were closing up, "I'm thinking of extending our hours. Folks in the neighborhood keep asking. We'd need someone to supervise the late afternoon shift." Ashley paused her counting, looking at her boss in surprise. "Are you offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering an opportunity to someone who has more than earned it," Frank replied with a fatherly smile. "A raise would come with it, of course, and we'd keep the schedule flexible for your girls." That night, after tucking the twins into bed, not without reading 2 stories, as was their new tradition, Ashley sat on the porch of the house that had become her home. A steaming cup of tea warmed her hands as she gazed at the Los Angeles stars. Olivia and Emma were truly thriving. Emma, once so withdrawn, had joined the school's children's choir, her sweet voice blending with the others. Olivia had discovered a natural talent for drawing, her colorful creations decorating not just their fridge, but also a special art gallery wall that Frank had insisted on creating at the market. The routine they had established was more than just survival. It was life, vibrant and real. Mornings were filled with breakfast chatter, afternoons with stories from school and work, and nights with quiet moments of gratitude. What Ashley didn't know, as she built her new life, was that David Sterling still watched from a distance. Through regular, discreet updates from Frank, he followed Ashley's progress. Through contacts at the school, he received reports on the twins' development. Each small victory was a confirmation that his silent intervention had been the right course of action. In his office atop a downtown skyscraper, David would sometimes find himself looking out the window in the direction of Willow Creek Road, imagining Ashley serving customers, the girls playing in the schoolyard. Elizabeth would have approved, he thought with a melancholy smile. She always said that sometimes all a person needs is a genuine chance. Ashley began implementing small improvements at the market, subtle suggestions that Frank welcomed with growing enthusiasm. She reorganized the aisles to be more accessible for elderly customers, created a more efficient inventory system using a simple but meticulously maintained ledger, and even started a small section for healthy and organic products after noticing a demand from the neighborhood. Frank, impressed by her initiative and practical vision, began to entrust her with more and more responsibility. "You have a real head for business," he commented one day as they reviewed the month's sales figures. "Ever thought about taking some classes?" The community center has a continuing education program. The idea planted a seed in Ashley's mind. In her spare hours, usually after the girls were asleep, she began studying basic business administration, accounting, and marketing. She borrowed books from the local library, stacking them on her nightstand, their pages soon filled with colorful sticky notes and margin scribbles. The twins, seeing their mother surrounded by books and notebooks each night, naturally mirrored her behavior. Olivia started asking for more advanced drawing books, determined to improve her technique. Emma, inspired by Ms. Peterson, developed a profound love for reading, often asking for weekend trips to the library. "Mommy," Olivia asked one night while Ashley was reviewing her notes on inventory control, "when I grow up, can I have a store like Uncle Frank's?" Ashley smiled, pulling her daughter onto her lap. The affectionate nickname the girls had given Frank warmed her heart. He had truly become a grandfather figure to them. "You can be whatever you want to be, my love. The sky's the limit." Emma, who was on the floor drawing what looked like a classroom, looked up. "I want to be a teacher, like Ms. Peterson." Their childish ambitions made Ashley's heart swell with pride. Just a few months ago, her daughters hardly dared to dream about the next day, too consumed with worries no child should ever have. Now they were making plans for the future with the unshakable confidence of children who feel safe and loved. The market became more than a job, it was a community. Ashley knew every regular customer by name, their preferences, their stories. Mrs. Rodriguez came every morning for fresh bread and always had a story about her grandchildren. Mr. Chen sought out special ingredients for his traditional recipes, occasionally bringing small treats for the twins. Young Amy, a college student, would stop for coffee before her evening classes and sometimes stay to chat about her dreams of becoming a doctor. Frank watched with satisfaction as his store, once just another shop, gradually transformed into a true neighborhood hub. Sales were up consistently, but more important than the numbers was the sense of warmth and community that Ashley had helped cultivate. "You know," he said one day as they were closing the register, "when I got that mysterious letter recommending you, I'll admit I was skeptical. But now I completely understand why someone went to the trouble to make sure you got this chance." Ashley froze, her hands hovering over the cash drawer. What letter? Frank, realizing his slip too late, scratched the back of his neck uncomfortably. "Oh, it's nothing important, just a recommendation I received. What matters is that you proved yourself all on your own." But the seed of curiosity had been planted. Ashley started to notice all the other little details that had fallen so perfectly into place. The house, the flexible job so close to home, the school that had accepted the girls mid-semester without any issue. It was as if an invisible hand had carefully orchestrated every piece of her new life. At another time, this realization might have terrified her. But now, with her daughters thriving and her own confidence rebuilt, Ashley felt only a profound sense of gratitude for the mystery that had reshaped their world. The seasons turned, and life on Willow Creek Road continued to blossom. The small garden behind the house, once a mere patch of possibility, now flourished under the family's first attempts at gardening. Olivia insisted on planting sunflowers because they're happy, like us, Mommy. Emma preferred daisies because they're simple but pretty. One particularly busy afternoon at the market, Ashley served a distinguished-looking gentleman who seemed vaguely familiar. He bought only a newspaper and a bottle of water, but his eyes held a look of recognition that made her wonder. The customer was David Sterling, allowing himself, for the first time, a closer look at the life he had helped create. He watched how she interacted with the other customers, how she kept everything organized even during the rush, how her smile, though tired, remained genuine. Leaving the market, David felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since Elizabeth's passing. His wife always used to say that true charity wasn't about giving people what they needed, but giving them the chance to earn what they wanted. Ashley Miller had done just that. Given the opportunity, she had not only risen from the ashes, but was now building something remarkable for herself, her daughters, and the entire Willow Creek Road community. That evening, after closing the store and picking the girls up from the tutoring they now attended, Ashley sat in her favorite chair on the porch. Olivia and Emma played in the small garden, their laughter mingling with the chirp of crickets. The smell of apple pie, her first attempt in years, drifted from the kitchen. Her study books were stacked neatly on the table beside her, waiting for the quiet hours after the girls went to bed. In his downtown office, David Sterling also gazed up at the same star-filled sky. The reports on his desk showed that Peterson's Market was having its best year in decades. The twins' school evaluations showed remarkable progress. But it wasn't the numbers that made him smile. It was the certainty that Elizabeth would be proud, not just of the help he had given, but of the way Ashley had transformed that help into something so much greater. Night moved on in Los Angeles, wrapping the city in its dark embrace. In the little house on Willow Creek Road, a family was finding its way back to life. At Peterson's Market, a community was rediscovering the meaning of neighborliness. And somewhere between heaven and earth, silent miracles continued to happen, one day at a time. The dawn light was just filtering through the windows of Peterson's Market when Ashley received the news. She was organizing the shelves, a morning ritual, when Frank called her into his small office. "Ashley," he began, fumbling with some papers on his worn desk, "you've been more than just an employee these past few months. Sales are up 30% since you started, and the customers, well, they come to the store specifically during your shifts." Ashley felt her heart begin to race, her hands, calloused from work, gripping the green apron of her uniform. "Starting today, you're officially the assistant manager," Frank announced, handing her an envelope that contained the details of her raise and new benefits. Tears sprang to her eyes instantly, blurring her vision. "Mr. Peterson, Frank," he corrected gently. "I think it's past time you just called me Frank." Outside the office, the first customers of the day were beginning to arrive. Ashley could hear the familiar chime of the bell, the friendly voices of the regulars. Her world, once so small and terrifying, had expanded to encompass this entire community. At home, the changes were just as remarkable. Olivia and Emma, now with healthy color in their cheeks and a permanent sparkle in their eyes, had flourished. Breakfast was no longer a rushed, scavenged meal. It was a family ritual with cereal, fruit, and occasional weekend pancakes. "Mommy," Olivia asked one morning while drawing in her new sketchbook, "can we have a birthday party this year?" Ashley, preparing their lunches for school, paused. The last birthday the twins had celebrated was marked by a single cupcake, split 3 ways on a park bench. The memory still stung. "Of course we can, my love," she replied, her voice firm with the new certainty that she could provide these simple joys. "We'll make it the best party you've ever had." Emma, playing with building blocks on the floor, looked up with interest. "Can we have chocolate cake with strawberry frosting?" Ashley promised they could, smiling as she watched their faces light up. Across the city, in his skyscraper office, David Sterling received his weekly report on the Miller family. It was a discreet file containing school updates, progress reports from the market, and the occasional photograph taken from a distance. "The girls are excelling in school," his assistant noted, pointing to the latest evaluations. and Mrs. Miller was just promoted at the market. David flipped through the documents, his eyes lingering on a recent photo. Ashley was in the house's garden with the twins, all three of them laughing as they planted flowers. It was an image that stood in stark contrast to the one seared into his memory of her sleeping on a park bench. Elizabeth would be proud, he murmured to himself, his thumb gently brushing the wedding band he still wore. His late wife had always insisted that everyone deserved a second chance. Someone just had to believe in them. At the market, Ashley continued to implement small changes with big impacts. She rearranged aisles for better accessibility, created a popular healthy food section, and even set up a delivery service for local residents with mobility issues. "You have a mind for business," Frank commented one day, watching her patiently explain the benefits of different herbal teas to an elderly customer. "Ever thought of taking some courses?" The idea took root again. In the quiet hours after her daughters were asleep, Ashley continued her self-education, devouring books on administration, accounting, and marketing. Subjects that had once seemed impossibly distant now lay open on her kitchen table. The twins, seeing their mother studying, naturally followed her lead. Olivia honed her artistic talents with growing dedication, her drawings decorating not just their home, but also a special mural Frank had set up in the store. Emma, more introspective, discovered a deep love for reading, consuming books at a pace that astonished her teacher. One busy afternoon, Ashley served a customer who seemed vaguely familiar. He was a distinguished gentleman in an impeccable suit who bought only a newspaper and a bottle of water. His eyes held a gleam of recognition that intrigued her, but before she could dwell on it, he was gone. Ashley had no idea that this was David Sterling, allowing himself a rare, up-close look at the life he had helped reshape. He watched how she managed the rush, her calm efficiency, her genuine smile that never faltered. Leaving the store, David felt a peace he hadn't known since Elizabeth's death. "You were right, my love," he murmured, looking up at the sky. Sometimes, all someone needs is a chance. The months rolled by, each one bringing more positive change. Ashley was not only paying her bills, but was managing to save a little each month. The twins had new winter clothes, quality school supplies, and a few simple toys, luxuries that had once been unthinkable. The girl's birthday was celebrated with a modest but joyous party in the backyard. Frank and a few regular customers came, bringing small gifts and warm wishes. There was a chocolate cake with strawberry frosting, just as Emma had requested, and colorful balloons that Olivia insisted on keeping long after they had deflated. David observed the celebration from afar, his heart warmed by the scene. The transformation was profound, not just in their material circumstances, but in something deeper. There was a new confidence in Ashley's posture, a pure joy in the girl's laughter, a sense of belonging that had been absent before. That night, after the last candle was blown out and the final guest had departed, Ashley sat on the porch. Olivia and Emma were sleeping soundly, exhausted and happy. The starry Los Angeles sky shone above, and for the first time in a long, long time, Ashley allowed herself to dream about the future without a trace of fear. In his office, David placed the report file into a special drawer. The photographs, school reports, and market updates all told a story of a successful fresh start. But the true miracle, he knew, wasn't in the documents. It was in the resilience of a mother determined to build a better life for her daughters and in the human capacity to rise when given a chance. Night moved on in Los Angeles, covering the city in its starry mantle. In the small house on Willow Creek Road, 3 hearts beat in peace, their dreams no longer haunted by the specter of tomorrow. And somewhere between heaven and earth, Elizabeth Sterling smiled, knowing her husband had finally understood the true meaning of compassion. Spring arrived in Los Angeles in a burst of color and promise. Ashley woke early one Saturday, the sun just beginning to gild the horizon, and looked out at the small backyard. The space, once empty and dormant, now called to her with endless possibilities. Mommy, Olivia appeared beside her, still in her pajamas, her eyes sleepy but curious. "What are you looking at?" Ashley smiled, running a hand through her daughter's dark hair. "I was thinking of making a garden. What do you think?" Olivia's eyes widened with excitement. "Can we plant flowers? And strawberries? Emma loves strawberries." As if summoned by her name, Emma appeared in the kitchen, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. "Who said strawberries?" Breakfast that morning became an impromptu planning session at the kitchen table. Between bowls of cereal and glasses of orange juice, they sketched out their dreams for the garden. Olivia wanted a rainbow of flowers. Emma, more practical, insisted on vegetables and fruits they could eat. "We can have both," Ashley assured them, her heart warmed by their enthusiasm. "We just need to learn how to make everything grow." That afternoon, returning from the market with a few basic seed packets, all she could afford, Ashley found a surprise on her porch. A gardening toolbox, seemingly new but artfully dirtied to look used, sat carefully placed by the door. Inside were a variety of high-quality seeds, essential tools, and a detailed guide to urban gardening. What Ashley didn't know was that David Sterling had personally selected every item. He had spent hours in a specialized gardening shop, consulting experts on the best options for beginners. Elizabeth had loved gardening, and he found himself choosing some of her favorites: daisies, lavender, and sunflowers. The twins were ecstatic about their gift from fate, as Olivia called it. Emma was already poring over the manual with intense focus, while Olivia organized the seeds by color. The work began the next day. Ashley discovered that the soil had already been expertly prepared, another careful detail David had arranged during the house's construction. The earth was rich and ready, and a basic irrigation system was already installed. "First, we need to prepare the beds," Ashley explained, reading from the manual. The girls, dressed in old overalls and straw hats found in the basement, listened intently. The entire weekend was devoted to the project. Neighbors passing by would stop to watch and offer advice. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived 2 houses down, brought over tomato seedlings from her own garden. Mr. Chen, a regular at the market, appeared with seeds for Asian vegetables and detailed instructions in his heavily accented English. Olivia and Emma soaked up every moment. They learned the differences between seeds, how to measure the correct planting depth, and the importance of water and sunlight. Ashley turned each task into a lesson: math as they measured distances, science as she explained photosynthesis, and responsibility as they established a watering schedule. Weeks passed, and the first green sprouts appeared. The girls' excitement was infectious. Every morning began with a meticulous inspection of the garden, checking the progress of each plant. Emma kept a detailed journal, sketching and measuring the seedlings' growth. Olivia created colorful, hand-drawn labels to identify each species. In his secret visits, David watched from a distance as the transformation unfolded, not just of the garden, which thrived under their dedicated care, but of the family. Ashley looked stronger, more grounded. The twins, once so wary of the world, now ran freely through the yard, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood. One day, while discreetly overseeing the accidental delivery of more gardening supplies, David noticed something that made him smile. In the middle of the garden, growing strong and determined, was a sunflower. It had been Elizabeth's favorite, and seeing it there, turning its face to the sun like a symbol of hope, felt like a sign from her. The garden soon became more than a family project. It became the heart of the neighborhood. Other children started to wander over, drawn by the twins' laughter and curious about the plants. Ashley, seizing the opportunity, began hosting small gardening lessons on Saturdays. "Every seed has a story," she would explain to the group of kids seated in a circle on the grass, "and each one needs care, patience, and love to grow." Olivia and Emma blossomed with the new friendships. Tommy, the shy boy from next door, revealed himself to be an expert at identifying beneficial insects. Maria, Mrs. Rodriguez's granddaughter brought traditional recipes from her grandmother to use the herbs that were beginning to sprout. As summer deepened, the garden exploded with life and color. Mrs. Rodriguez's tomatoes hung red and juicy. Mr. Chen's aromatic herbs perfumed the air, and flowers of every hue attracted butterflies and hummingbirds, transforming the small yard into an urban oasis. Ashley began incorporating their produce into every meal. The twins, once picky eaters, now proudly consumed the vegetables they had helped grow. Every dinner became a celebration of their garden's bounty. "Mommy," Emma commented one evening as they enjoyed a salad with fresh tomatoes, "I think I want to be a botanist when I grow up." Olivia, not to be outdone, declared, "And I'll be an artist and paint all the flowers in the world." Ashley smiled. Like the plants in their garden, her daughters had found fertile ground and were now growing toward the sun, each in her own unique way. The garden's success did not go unnoticed at the market. Frank, impressed by the fresh produce Ashley occasionally brought in, suggested she start selling the surplus. "Organic is in," he argued, "and our customers would love something grown right here in the neighborhood." Thus, a new project was born. Ashley began carefully packaging her produce in small bundles, each with a hand-drawn label by Olivia. Emma, with her natural precision, took charge of weighing and recording each item. David, on one of his discreet visits to the market, couldn't hide his smile when he saw the small Miller Garden produce section near the cash register. He bought a package of cherry tomatoes, knowing they were the same variety Elizabeth used to grow. Autumn arrived gently, bringing new lessons. Ashley and the girls learned about seasonal crops, about preparing the garden for the winter, about the eternal cycle of nature. "It's like life, isn't it?" Olivia observed one day as they helped prepare some plants for the cold. "Some things end, but other things are just beginning." Ashley hugged her daughter, marveling at her simple wisdom. "Exactly, my love." The garden had become more than a hobby. It was a living metaphor for their own journey. Like the plants they cultivated, they had found rich soil to grow in, support to strengthen them, and the light to help them flourish. In his office, David kept a special file of photographs documenting the garden's progress. The discreetly captured images showed its transformation from bare earth to the first beds, from tiny sprouts to the explosion of summer color, from the girls' first friendships to the neighborhood gatherings in the yard. One photo in particular held his gaze. Ashley and the twins, their backs to the camera, admiring their tallest sunflower at sunset. The flower, majestic in its simplicity, seemed to bless the family with its golden presence. "You were right about the little miracles, Elizabeth," he murmured, gently touching the photo. "They happen every day if we just know where to plant the seeds." The garden continued to grow and evolve, just like its caretakers. Ashley discovered she could be both strong and gentle. Olivia learned that beauty came in many forms. Emma understood that the best things in life take time. And David, in his secret visits, saw hope growing in fertile ground, love flourishing where none was thought possible, and miracles sprouting from the smallest seeds of kindness. The house, once so silent, now overflowed with life. Children's laughter echoed in the yard, the aroma of fresh herbs filled the kitchen, and 3 hearts beat in harmony with the rhythm of nature. It was more than just a garden. It was a testament to the transformative power of love, perseverance, and faith. And somewhere, Elizabeth Sterling smiled, knowing her husband had finally learned her most precious lesson, that the greatest miracles begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Night fell over Los Angeles under a blanket of dark clouds. David Sterling remained in his car for several long minutes, observing the welcoming lights of the small house on Willow Creek Road. Walter, his driver for decades, waited in respectful silence. "Are you sure about this, sir?" Walter finally asked, his eyes meeting David's in the rearview mirror. David adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture entirely out of character. "It's time, Walter. They deserve to know the truth." The wind began to pick up as David climbed the steps to the porch. Through the window he could see Ashley helping the twins with their homework at the kitchen table. The domestic scene, a world away from the nights he'd watched them on a park bench, made his heart constrict. His knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant. For a fleeting moment he considered turning back, preserving the anonymity that had served them all so well. But then he heard footsteps. Ashley opened the door, a welcoming smile on her face that instantly froze into a look of shock. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hand gripped the doorknob so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Mr. Sterling," she whispered. "Good evening, Ashley," he replied gently. "May we talk?" A distant rumble of thunder echoed as if the sky itself was responding to the tension. Olivia and Emma, curious about the visitor, peeked out from the kitchen. "Girls," Ashley called, her voice trembling, "go to your room, please." "But Mommy?" Olivia began to protest. "Now!" The twins, sensing their mother's uncharacteristic severity, reluctantly obeyed. Ashley turned her full attention back to David, her eyes now hard with a mixture of fear and suspicion. "What are you doing here? I came to explain everything." David took a step forward, halting when Ashley instinctively recoiled. "Please, Ashley, you deserve to know the truth." A flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The first drops of rain began to fall, heavy and cold. Ashley hesitated for a long moment before opening the door wider. "Come in. But if you try anything—" "I didn't come to cause trouble," David assured her, stepping into the home he had built for her. "I came to fix a mistake." The storm outside intensified rapidly, the wind howling through the trees. Ashley led David to the living room, maintaining a careful distance between them. "Mommy," Emma's voice called from the hallway, "it's thundering really loud." Ashley glanced at the window, seeing the storm's growing fury. "Let's all go down to the basement," she decided. "It's safer there." The basement was cozy and well-equipped, another detail David had meticulously planned. The girls settled on a sofa in the corner, clinging to each other and watching the adults with wide, uncertain eyes. "Now," Ashley said, taking a chair opposite David, "explain." David took a deep breath, his hands clasped over his knees. "It all began one morning, a few months ago. I was on my way to my office when I saw you and the girls, sleeping on a bench in Griffith Park." Ashley visibly stiffened, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. "The guilt consumed me," David continued. "I remembered the day I signed off on your termination, the justifications I made to myself about company policy, and how exceptions couldn't be made." "You don't know," Ashley interrupted, her voice shaking with contained rage. "You have no idea what we went through." "Then tell me," David urged gently. "I want to know everything." The thunder rumbled overhead, but it seemed more distant now, as if time had slowed for this confrontation. Ashley closed her eyes, gathering her strength. When she opened them, they were filled with unshed tears. "In the beginning, I thought I'd find another job quickly. I had good references, experience. But with 2 small children, nobody wanted to take the risk. The jobs I did find only lasted until one of the girls got sick." Her voice faltered, but she pushed on. "My savings were gone in 3 months. The apartment was next. I tried the shelters, but there was never room for all 3 of us together. And I couldn't be separated from my daughters." Olivia and Emma, on the sofa, hugged each other tighter, the memories still sharp despite their young age. "Do you know what it's like to see your children crying from hunger and not be able to do anything?" Ashley asked, the tears now streaming freely. "Do you know what it's like to give them your own food and know it's still not enough? To sleep on park benches, praying no one hurts you in the night?" David felt his own eyes begin to burn. "Ashley, No," she cut him off. "You don't know. You weren't there when Emma got pneumonia and I had to beg at hospitals. You weren't there when Olivia cried, asking why we couldn't go home. You weren't there for the nights I held them, promising everything would be okay, knowing I was lying. The storm raged outside, but in the basement, the silence was absolute. I watched you, David finally admitted, his voice hoarse. For weeks. I followed your routine. I saw how, even in the worst circumstances, you kept the girls clean, took them to the library, tried to maintain some shred of normalcy. And only then did you decide to help? The bitterness in Ashley's voice was a physical thing. David shook his head. No, I decided to help immediately. But I wanted to do it right. Not just a handout. I wanted to give you a real chance to start over. He gestured around them. This house. Every detail was planned for you. The job at the market, the places at the school. It was all arranged so you could have autonomy, not charity. Ashley looked around the basement with new eyes, the shelves of supplies, the small generator, the extra blankets, all of it so carefully considered. Why, she finally asked. Why do all this in secret? David was quiet for a moment. My wife, Elizabeth, she always said that real charity isn't about the giver, it's about the one who receives. She ran an assistance fund for employees. When she died, I let it all go. I focused on the numbers, the policies. His voice broke. Seeing you and the girls on that bench, it was like Elizabeth was showing me all my failures at once. This wasn't just about fixing one mistake. It was about honoring her. Olivia, who had been listening with rapt attention, got up from the sofa and walked over to David. With a child's pure innocence, she took his hand. Are you our guardian angel? David let out a choked, tearful laugh. No, sweetheart, just a man trying to fix his mistakes. Emma joined her sister. Mrs. Elizabeth must be proud. Ashley watched the scene, her emotions a chaotic storm of anger, gratitude, hurt, and relief. For 2 years, she said softly, I hated you. I hated your company, your name. I hated driving past your buildings while my daughters were hungry. She took a deep breath. But now, I don't know what to feel. You owe me nothing, David replied. Not gratitude, not forgiveness. What I did was an attempt to right a wrong that should never have happened. The storm outside began to subside, its thunder now a distant rumble. What happens now? Ashley asked. That's up to you, David answered. The house is yours. The deed is ready to be transferred. The job at the market is yours by your own merit. You've built a life here, Ashley, a life that is rightfully yours. Olivia and Emma returned to their mother, nestling into her arms. And you? Ashley questioned. Will you just disappear? David smiled sadly. Only if that's what you want. But I would be honored to get to know you all, to be part of your lives in a more direct way. Ashley looked at her daughters, seeing in them the future she had fought so hard for, a future ironically made possible by the man who had once nearly destroyed her world. Maybe, she said finally, we can start over, not as a boss and an employee, not as a benefactor and a beneficiary, just as people. David nodded, raw emotion in his eyes. I would like that very much. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clean, renewed silence. In the basement of the house, 4 people began to write a new chapter. Can we show Mr. Sterling our garden? We have sunflowers. Olivia, ever expressive, broke the solemn moment. Ashley couldn't help a small smile. It's dark now, sweetheart, but maybe he can come back another day to see them. Sunflowers, David murmured gently, were Elizabeth's favorite flowers. I know, Ashley answered, surprising herself. Somehow I always knew there was something special about that first seed we found. The twins began to yawn, the emotional toll of the night finally catching up to them. Ashley stood, her maternal instincts taking over. It's late. The girls need to sleep. David rose as well, understanding the cue. Of course. Can I come back to see the sunflowers? Ashley hesitated for only a second before nodding. Sunday, We make a special lunch on Sundays." It was more than an invitation. It was an offer of peace, a first step. As David climbed the basement stairs, followed by Ashley and the girls, the air felt lighter, as it always does after a storm. There were no guarantees it would be easy, but there was hope. On the porch, before leaving, David paused. "Ashley?" "Yes?" Elizabeth used to say the greatest miracles start with the smallest acts of kindness. But I think she was only partly right. The real miracles start with people like you. People who, even in the worst of times, never lose their humanity. Ashley didn't reply, but her eyes glistened. The twins, half asleep, murmured their goodbyes. David walked to his car where Walter waited patiently. The sky had cleared, and stars began to appear. Somewhere, he was sure, Elizabeth was smiling. The morning light revealed the previous night's damage. Ashley stood staring at the cabin's battered roof, the torn gutters, and the debris strewn across the garden she and the girls had so carefully tended. The once majestic sunflowers were bent and broken. David had left with a promise to arrange for immediate repairs. It was still early when a pickup truck pulled up. Ashley, busy trying to salvage what she could from the garden, barely looked up. Then she heard a voice. Ashley? A voice she hadn't heard in 5 years, a voice that haunted her nightmares, a voice belonging to the man who had left her, never knowing she carried 2 new lives. "David," she whispered, the color draining from her face. Ryan Rodriguez stood frozen, his eyes locked on the woman he had once loved. He looked older, more weathered, but he still had that intense gaze that had once made her believe in empty promises. I came to do the repairs," he stammered. "Mr. Sterling hired me, but I didn't know. I never imagined." The sound of childish laughter cut him off. Olivia and Emma ran out of the house, eager to see the garden's state after the storm. Ryan staggered as if struck, his eyes scanning the faces of the 2 girls, perfect mirror images with dark hair and expressive eyes. His eyes, his smile. "Are they mine?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Instinctively, Ashley moved between him and her daughters. "Olivia, Emma, go inside." "But Mommy," Olivia began. "Now." The twins, sensing the immense tension, reluctantly obeyed. Ryan remained paralyzed, his eyes fixed on the door through which his daughters, had vanished. "You didn't know," Ashley said finally. Not a question, but a bitter statement. "How could I?" His voice trembled. "You never... Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Tell you?" Ashley let out a humorless laugh. "You disappeared, Ryan, vanished in the middle of the night with all your promises. How was I supposed to tell you anything?" The silence that followed was heavy with 5 years of unsaid words and missed moments. "They have a father," Ryan murmured, more to himself than to her. "My daughters have a father." "They have me," Ashley answered firmly. "And that's been enough." Ryan took a step forward, stopping when Ashley held her ground. "Let me know them. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but they deserve to know they have a father." Tears burned in Ashley's eyes. "Do you know what they deserve? They deserve not to have been abandoned before they were even born. They deserve not to have gone hungry and cold on the streets because I couldn't support them alone. They deserve so much more than you could ever give them." The pain on Ryan's face was palpable. "On the streets?" "Ashley, what happened?" So Ashley told him. She told him about discovering the pregnancy too late, about the lost jobs, the nights on park benches. She told him about David Sterling and the second chance that had changed their lives. And as she spoke, she saw the horror dawn in the eyes of the man she once loved. Inside the house, Olivia and Emma peeked through the window. "Who is he, Emma?" Olivia whispered. "I don't know," Emma replied, "but Mommy is crying." Ryan listened to every word. When she finished, he was openly weeping. "Let me fix this," he begged. "I can't change the past, but I can be here now. I can be the father they deserve." "And if you disappear again?" Ashley asked, her voice breaking. "How can I trust you won't leave when it gets hard?" "Because now," he answered simply, "now I know what I have to lose." The creak of the door broke the moment. Olivia and Emma, unable to contain their curiosity, had ventured back out. "Mommy!" Olivia called, her small hand seeking her mother's. "Why are you crying?" Ashley looked at her daughters, then at Ryan, seeing in his features the same shock of recognition the girls had yet to understand. How could she explain this? "Girls," she began, her voice trembling, This is... "I'm Ryan," he cut in softly, kneeling to their level. "And I'm your dad." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia and Emma looked to their mother for confirmation, confusion and fear mixing in their identical faces. "Dad?" Emma whispered, the words strange on her tongue. "Like at school, when Tommy talks about his dad?" Ryan swallowed hard, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Yes, just like that." "But where were you?" Olivia asked, her small voice laced with a hurt she couldn't yet understand. "Why did you never come see us?" "Because I made a terrible mistake," Ryan answered honestly. "The biggest mistake of my life. I left before I knew you existed, and I lost. I lost so much." Ashley watched them, her heart in pieces, as her daughters processed a truth that would change them forever. Emma, ever cautious, clung to her leg. Olivia, however, took a hesitant step toward Ryan. "Are you going to leave again?" The simple, devastating question made Ryan sob. "No, my little one, never again. If you'll let me, I want to know you. I want to be the dad I should have been." The sound of another car broke the moment. David Sterling stepped out of his sedan, stopping abruptly at the scene. "Ashley," he called, concern in his voice. "Is everything all right?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Not yet." The following days were a whirlwind of emotion. Ryan worked tirelessly on the house, each hammer blow an attempt to build a bridge over the 5-year chasm. The twins, at first hesitant, began to ask questions. They wanted to know everything about him. Ryan answered each inquiry with endless patience, knowing each answer was a small brick in the foundation he was trying to build. Ashley watched it all with a mix of fear and hope. She saw how Olivia ran to show Ryan her drawings, how Emma timidly started reading stories to him during his work breaks. She also saw how he drank in every moment with hungry eyes. David, for his part, remained present but discreet, offering silent support. He was the one who suggested Ryan join them for Sunday lunches, the one who arranged legal documents to establish paternity. One night, after the girls were asleep, Ashley found Ryan on the porch, gazing at the stars. "They're extraordinary," he said quietly. "Just like you, Ashley. You did an amazing job." "I had no choice," she replied. "They were all I had." "I'm sorry," he whispered, words he'd repeated 100 times. "If I could go back—" "But you can't," Ashley finished. "None of us can. We can only move forward." Ryan nodded, wiping away tears. Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" Ashley looked up at the twins' window, where a soft light still glowed. "They're kids, Ryan. Their hearts are still pure enough to forgive. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" The rebuilding wasn't just of the house. It was of trust, of relationships, of the family that never had a chance. Each day brought new challenges, new wounds to heal. Olivia began calling Ryan Dad, the word hesitant at first, then full of hope. Emma took longer, preferring to call him by his name, testing the waters. Ashley observed it all, vowing her daughters would have the father she never did, even if it meant opening her heart to forgiveness. David remained a constant, a silent reminder that miracles come from unexpected directions. He suggested small steps, ice cream after school, an afternoon at the park. The house was rebuilt, stronger than before, its freshly painted walls covering old scars. The garden was replanted, showing new sprouts. One morning, as they all worked in the garden, Olivia and Emma helping Ryan plant new sunflowers, while Ashley and David tidied the beds, Emma asked the question that had been hovering in the air. "Can we have a real dad?" The silence was broken by David's gentle smile. "Of course you can, sweetheart. The heart has endless room for love." Ryan looked at David with gratitude, realizing for the first time that he wasn't competing for love. He was simply adding to it. Ashley watched the scene with tear-filled eyes, her daughters playing with the father they had finally met, David the guardian angel who had transformed their lives, and herself, stronger, wiser, more capable of forgiving. The sun shone on them, promising a new beginning. The storm had passed, leaving behind not just destruction, but the chance to rebuild something stronger. And in the newly planted garden, the sunflowers began to grow again, their faces turned to the sun, knowing that after every dark night, dawn always comes. Spring sunshine bathed the house on Willow Creek Road in a golden, promising light. A year had passed since the stormy night that changed everything, and the transformation was visible in every detail. The garden, more lush than ever, burst with color. Majestic sunflowers raised their faces to the sky, roses perfumed the air, and a thriving vegetable patch provided food not just for the family, but for anyone in need. Ashley stood in the kitchen, making coffee, and watched the scene unfolding in the yard. Ryan was pushing Olivia and Emma on a swing he had built, each laugh from the girls ringing out like music. David, dressed in casual clothes, an unthinkable sight a year ago, was meticulously pruning shrubs, pausing occasionally to smile at his granddaughters. "Higher, Dad!" Olivia shouted, her dark hair flying. "I want to touch the sky." "Grandpa David, are you watching how high I'm going?" Emma added, her small legs pumping the air in pure joy. Ashley smiled, remembering how the words Dad and Grandpa had gradually found their place. Time, that great teacher, had softened edges that once seemed impossible to smooth. Where there had been hurt, there was now understanding. Where there had been pain, there was now love. The doorbell rang, announcing the day's first visitors. Ashley adjusted the badge she now wore proudly. Coordinator, Second Chances Project. It was more than a title. It was a symbol of life's surprising turns. Maria Rodriguez entered timidly, carrying her 2-month-old baby. Behind her came Anna, Christine, and Sophia, all carrying not just their bags, but stories of struggle that echoed Ashley's own. The living room, which once witnessed so many tears of despair, now served as the meeting point for the social project that had grown from their story. "Welcome," Ashley greeted them with a smile born from the soul. "Shall we begin?" The Second Chances Project had launched 3 months after the storm. Deeply moved by the transformation he had witnessed, David decided it was time to expand Elizabeth's legacy. The idea was simple and revolutionary: create a comprehensive support network for single mothers, offering not just financial aid, but the tools for true, lasting reconstruction. Ashley had been the natural choice to coordinate. Her story, from losing her job to rebuilding her life, served as a living testament that real change was possible. More than that, her experience allowed her to see beyond immediate needs, understanding the emotional and practical challenges each mother faced. "When I lost my job," Maria shared with the group, rocking her infant, "I thought it was the end of the world. I had just found out I was pregnant. The baby's father had disappeared. I felt so alone. But then I met Ashley, saw this house, met her daughters, and something inside me changed. I realized there's always hope." The weekly meetings had become a sacred space where women could share not only their pain, but their victories. Every small triumph, a new job, a completed course, a small home business started, was celebrated as a collective achievement. Outside, Ryan had joined David in the garden, leaving the girls to play with their dolls under a young oak tree. The two men, once rivals, had developed an unlikely but deep friendship. "I can never thank you enough," Ryan said quietly, helping trim a hedge, "for taking care of them when I failed so terribly." David paused, watching the girls chase butterflies. "You know, Ryan, I spent 60 years thinking I understood business, understood life. I had to lose Elizabeth to start learning what really matters. And even then, I almost missed the chance to make a difference." "What was Elizabeth like?" Ryan asked, noticing how her name always brought a special light to David's eyes. David smiled, lost in memory. She was pure light. She could see the best in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. This project, she would have loved it. Probably would have thought of it long before I did. Inside, the meeting continued. Ashley handed out enrollment forms for vocational courses, a partnership David had established with local institutions. Each woman had a personalized development plan. "When I first came here," Anna shared, nervously gripping a cup of coffee, "I could hardly look anyone in the eye. I was so ashamed, so afraid of being judged. But you all showed me that there's no shame in starting over, that each of us has a strength we never imagined." Ashley understood that feeling intimately. She remembered her own dark nights, the silent tears, the crushing weight of responsibility. But now, looking at the women gathered in her living room, she saw reflections not of defeat, but of resilience. The sound of children's laughter drifted in through the open window, a symphony of hope. That afternoon, after the meeting, David gathered everyone in the garden for a special announcement. "A year ago," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "a storm brought us all together in this house. That night, truths were revealed, wounds were exposed, and healing began. Today, I want to formalize something that has been decided in my heart for a long time." He took an envelope from his blazer, his hands trembling slightly as he handed it to Ashley. Inside was not just the deed to the house, but also documents establishing a permanent fund for the Second Chances Project. "Elizabeth," he continued, his voice breaking, "always said true charity isn't about giving people what they need, but giving them the tools to earn what they want. Ashley, you haven't just built your own path, you're paving the way for others." Tears ran freely down Ashley's face as she hugged the man who once represented everything wrong in her life and who now symbolized a second chance. Olivia and Emma rushed to join the hug. Ryan, still amazed by the miracle of his regained family, completed the circle. "Grandpa," Olivia asked, her voice filled with childlike wisdom, "do you think Grandma Elizabeth can see us from heaven?" David swallowed hard, looking at the sky. "I'm sure she can, sweetheart, and I'm sure she's very proud of all of us." The house had become more than a refuge. It was a home, a sanctuary, a beacon of hope. Its walls, which once saw despair, now echoed with joy. Its garden, which started with a few tentative seeds, now fed not just bodies, but souls. Ashley looked around, her daughters playing freely, Ryan finding redemption in fatherhood, David filling the role of grandfather with a dedication that made up for lost time. She saw the women from the project, each finding her way into the light. That night, after everyone had left, Ashley sat on the porch. The scent of sunflowers filled the air. Ryan joined her with 2 cups of tea. "What are you thinking about?" he finally asked. "Paths," she replied softly. "How sometimes we have to lose ourselves completely to find the right direction. How what seems like a tragedy can be just the start of something extraordinary." David, passing by to say good night, stopped to listen. "You know," Ashley continued, "for a long time I thought getting fired was the worst thing that could have happened to me. I hated you, David, hated your company, hated the world. But now I see it was just the beginning of a journey I needed to take." "To the place you were meant to be," David added, remembering Elizabeth's words. "Exactly," Ashley smiled. "To the place we were all meant to be." The comfortable silence was filled only by the sounds of the garden and the quiet breathing of the city. 3 people, their lives improbably intertwined, united by a profound truth: that forgiveness has the power to transform even the hardest stories into miracles. In the years to come, the house on Willow Creek Road would continue its sacred mission. More mothers would find hope within its walls. More gardens would flourish. More stories of redemption would be written. Olivia and Emma would grow strong and confident, loved by a mother, a father who found his way back, and a grandfather who proved it's never too late. The Second Chances Project would expand, touching more lives. And somewhere, Elizabeth Sterling would smile, knowing her legacy of love and compassion lived on, blooming like the sunflowers in the garden, forever turned toward the light. The house on Willow Creek Road would remain a silent testament that the greatest miracles often begin in the darkest moments, and that true, deep, transformative forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. It was more than a story of redemption. It was a reminder that sometimes the most winding paths lead us exactly where we need to be, and that love, in all its forms, has the power to transform not just hearts, but entire lives. In the garden, the sunflowers would continue to grow, their faces always turned to the sun, an eternal symbol of hope, forgiveness, and new beginnings. And within the cabin walls, the stories of every life touched by this small miracle on Willow Creek Road would echo forever.